more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war. Now, I'm very much a jump and work it out on the way down.
What if somebody was choosing to turn into this junction? How would that affect you?
What's the best piece of advice you've heard an ADI examiner give? And my story goes back to, I think it was 2017, 2018. So yeah, that's my story about the beast from East.
No,
Hope it gave you a little chuckle.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Inspire Instructor Training Podcast, where the learning never stops.
Welcome to episode 37 of the Inspire Instructor Training Podcast with myself and Diana. So today we are going to talk about our positives. We have a question coming up and a story, and we also have two new features for the podcast with Phil's Thoughts and Diana Digs Deeper. So we're looking forward to those as they come into the podcast. But before we do that, Diana, did you want to just mention to everyone what we have to offer?
Sure. I wanted to talk about our mentorship today because it's something we're very proud of. All of our members know that we can be contacted. I have regular phone calls, regular catch-ups and regular check-ins, making sure everybody's accountable for the goals that they're setting at the start of the week. Lots of lovely video courses, and it's only £20 per month, which is a nice little round sum for everybody to get some lovely CPD in.
Nice. So our first new segment, Phil's Thoughts. So in this little segment, what I want to do is I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of audiobooks, and they quite often have some interesting quotes that I remember and then forget. And I thought this would be a good time to tell everyone else about them while I remember them. And it also helps me because I think when I have to write them down and think about them for the podcast, I find this when we do the book club episodes that I take the book in more because I have to remember what I'm going to talk about. So this quote was from a podcast called Chasing Excellence, which is it's a fitness podcast, but it's like your mindset more so than actual fitness. And the quote is, "The more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war," which sounds like it's got nothing to do with driving instructing because it's about sweating and bleeding and wars and stuff. But the way I took that from the way they talked about it in the book was in the sense that if you put the effort in during training, then when you have to go and compete, like it's just like you're just doing what you've been doing. You're just kind of enjoying the fruits of your training. But that's exactly what we do in the car. And I think there's an element of, because we're not having standards checks very much at the moment, although I have heard several people from the DVSA now say that they are coming back. But my point is, with this, the more you sweat in peacetime, is this is when you should be doing your training. This is when you should be honing your skills and fine-tuning becoming the best instructor you can be, because then when standards check comes about, you're ready. There's no sort of mad panic, quick, let's get ready. We've already done it. We've put in the work. We've done the training. And so, yeah, I think that'd be my advice for people is don't wait and to be fair, that you're listening to a podcast, so you're probably already doing this to a certain extent. But my advice is don't wait for that standards check and then panic book a course or panic book any a training session with a trainer. It's now should be when you're honing your skills, and then when that letter, or is it an email now? I think the email comes through. It's not as scary because you feel prepared.
Nice. I really like that. I haven't heard Phil's thoughts on that one, and that was lovely. I completely resonate with that.
Cool. Shall we move on to our positives from this week? Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
No, do you mind if I go?
On
We have had two lovely. We've had quite a few more, but two real significantly nice part three passes by a couple of our more active members. And it was just it was so nice this morning because I was having breakfast with my sister and my brother-in-law, and a photo popped up on my messages, and it was from a part three pass at 10 o'clock from a half 8 in the morning test. And that's what I mean about that whole mentorship, because it was like I literally held my breath. And of course it was a lovely, lovely score, a high quality score. But and I've alluded to this fact on social media as well, because I'm a big fan in letting people celebrate their own passes. So that's why I'm not naming the people, because I think it's important for them to, just celebrate that in their own right. But what was really wonderful in the lead up to actually both these part three passes is that they both truly believed that they had done it. Speaks perfectly to your thoughts. Truly believed that they had put the work in so that they could just show what they've done. And it was really nice. So that belief in themselves, and getting that picture through this morning at 10:07, me holding my breath and seeing that, I was in the cafe and literally squealed with delight. So it was a real positive for me. And them, of course, but it was a nice little.
I love that, and obviously I know who you're talking about. But I think that's interesting about the whole mentorship thing is that it that person that you're talking about hasn't just like popped on to watch some of our videos, or um just been on a course or done one Zoom with us. They've been within the mentorship for a while. They've been using our accountability posts quite regularly. Like they've been we've been part of their journey. Now that's not me saying like we definitely did it for them, because they had trainers and absolutely that they would have had a huge part in it. It's more from my perspective. I think we actually get a bigger sort of kind of satisfaction and joy out of the person passing, because we have been part of their journey and
Mhm.
we've been along that process. And it's a bit more like when you train a learner, like from start to finish, you feel like you're part of that journey. Whereas if, I don't know, if you did like a 6 hour intensive and rescue sort of thing with a pupil, yeah, you'd be happy that they passed, but it's not the same as the one you put the hours in for. So I think from a selfish point of view, I think the mentorship works really well, because we actually get to feel like we're part of people's journeys, which is lovely. Um, so my positive this week or this last couple of weeks was having a coaching session. So I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning this, as it was my coaching session. So I had a coaching session with Terry Cook, and I fully recommend anyone looking for some coaching to go to Terry. Terry is fantastic at coaching, and works perfectly for me in the sense that he gets me and we have a bit of a rapport, which really helps. But also he won't like mince his words with me either. And I'm sure he wouldn't necessarily be like that with everyone. He knows that would work with me. So it's like, and then that's what a good makes a good coach. You can adapt for who you are. So my positive was that coaching session, because I came out of that coaching session with energy and enthusiasm for what I'm going to do next, and bursting with ideas. And yeah, so I needed the coach. I wanted a coaching session to help me gather my thoughts together with what I wanted to do, and Terra was perfect for that. So that was my positive.
I love that. And I love the fact that you found the right person for you.
So I'm going to follow up with my challenge here, because it massively relates to my positive. It's a follow on. It's like the next day. So the next day was then I sort of was hit with this. Whoa, I've got to do all this big stuff now, and it was like it like genuinely felt daunting, because I want to sort of expand and do and do all these big things for the right reasons, but it was suddenly like, no, I've got to do it. And it's scary and it might go wrong and all of the things that you have in your head when you want to do it. Now, I'm very much a jump and work it out on the way down, of which my wife is the complete opposite and has tried to talk me out of several things. Uh, so yeah, no, I'm a just go for it sort of kind of guy. So I will just go for it, but it is scary. And I think again, I think people can sometimes relate with that when maybe going solo um or just becoming a driving instructor, like that decision to do that. So yeah, I think it is scary, but I think you don't get anywhere if you don't try these things.
I completely agree. I think it's also um, really nice that you and your wife complement each other in that way as
Oh no,
well.
I just ignore her.
Well, I don't know. I think that there will be an element of she'll throw some stuff at you that you might then consider. You may choose to take a different path, but I still think she'll have some valid points that then you consider. My challenge, well, I think everybody and their dog knew I was on holiday. I was rather excited to be going on a child-free holiday. So I think my challenge this week is just getting back on track. I thought I know that I'm going on about the mentorship a little bit, a lot during this podcast, but even though I was on holiday, that support didn't stop. So, I wanted to make sure that there was all these different things that I needed to follow up on. I didn't, I was always there for people, but I've sort of pushed the things that I needed to follow up on until the tail end of this week. And of course, it's half term. And in addition to half term, I had family staying because they were looking after my daughter. I then overcommitted because of mum guilt. And then had people over for dinner and play dates, and we went to Alton Towers. And I know this all sounds lovely. And then I had my sister and everybody over at the weekend. So I've not stopped. I've absolutely not stopped. And I'm knackered. I'm absolutely knackered because I overcommitted. And I actually thought, gosh, how easy is it as instructors for us to do that? We get to the point where the learner wants to do, 3 more lessons before test, or your mum's mate has a friend that can't find an driving instructor, so we take them on even though we have no capacity to take them on. And I suppose I just wanted to sort of flag that as a challenge in terms of recognize when you yourself are overcommitting, when you start to feel run down and absolutely knackered and everything's sort of building up, shall we say, then that's a moment for you to step back.
You've got too many gas burners on at the moment, and you're trying to catch up. I get it. Okay, so we're going to go into our next new feature, which is Diana Digs Deeper. I feel like I came up with that name.
You absolutely came up with that name.
You absolutely have to come up with the content, though. So, what is your Diana's Digs Deeper?
Okay, so we're all about the practical tips. So for me today, I'm going to take one of the most basic cornerstones, if you like, of driving lessons, and that is the right turn emerge. And basically, with the right turn emerge, one of the questions that instructors might find themselves asking when choosing when to emerge, is it safe? Now, that is an okay question. You have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. It's either a yes or a no. And actually, by asking that question, we don't really get a good understanding of whether the pupil has any context of how they've made that decision. So I wanted to give some alternative options to the is it safe question. So some of the things that I would ask when digging deeper with pupils on a right turn emerge proactively would be, how are you going to make that decision? Or what are you taking into account on approach? When do you think your next opportunity to go will be? When will we have our space? How would this differ if there was a car opposite us? How is the car opposite us affecting the cars on the left? So for me, it's absolutely bringing the environment that you're presented with and questioning them on that. Not only um not only just in terms of what's actually happening, but what might happen. So something like, well, what if somebody was choosing to turn into this junction? How would that affect you? What if there was cars parked all the way up to the edge? What would our options be? What if someone was emerging up ahead on that driveway? Where else do you need to look? So again, it's just taking that what's happening and taking that next level so that you're exploiting every little bit of learning. Not necessarily in the first instance, but it's layering it up. So we wanted to give you a couple of sort of other alternative questions to is it safe?
So I would also ask them because I liked your what if questions, like how would it be different? And I would ask something along the lines of like how would it be different if you're in a rush? So like how is this decision different if you need a wee? Or how is this different if you need to get to the train station on time and that question. I'd also potentially sort of suggest that maybe that conversation absolutely can occasionally happen at the junction or after the junction or on like in between the junctions, but I think also it could be a pullover and let's mind map this
Yeah.
and have that as let's like brainstorm all of these ideas
Hmm.
because you came up with about a billion great questions, and my concern is someone hearing that and going, right, ready, I'm going to ask all those questions before we get to the junction. I like the idea of mind mapping it and then reminding the pupils with the question on the move.
Yeah, I like that. And absolutely, I think the what I like about what you've just said there is you've given them a very specific example, whereas I said, we can do this proactively in advance of doing the junction. So how will you make this decision? So let's explore that. I'm a big fan of mind mapping, brain dumping, just getting everything off their chest. I think it's also important though, maybe my caveat to this is and I said it earlier, layer it. Don't let them just explore it first of all. This is more you know, drip feed these questions and these scenarios because otherwise you don't want them going into what am I going to do if the car's there? What am I going to do if I need to wee in the car's there and the parked cars are there and it's, something's coming out of a driveway?
Yeah, no, I agree. That conversation's not part of my initial chat about junction. That's a people who's like coming up to like test or certainly can do a lot of driving and is now more thinking about their driving rather than trying to just do it. Um, yeah, because again, I can see that happening where you have this nice, lovely chat, and then you go do some really quiet junctions all about car control and all of that conversation is pointless. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so it's time to move on to our lovely question, and here it is.
Hi Phil and Diana, it's Iwan Williams here. I'm a ADI and a trainer from South Wales in the Swansea Valleys. And my question to you is, what's the best piece of advice you've heard an ADI examiner give to a PDI after a part 3 or to an ADI after a standard check? Yeah, so thank you and keep up the good work.
So I struggled with this question, mainly because I'm just a meanie and I don't think the examiners give that good advice. Um, I think we have different opinions on that. I am always of the opinion examiners are very good at assessing. Um, I don't think they're good trainers. I'm sure they can become good trainers, but in their current roles, they're not necessarily good trainers. And I quite often hear them say stuff that just doesn't make sense for the scenario. However, my local examiner, does give one bit of advice pretty much to every single PDI I've ever done, and I absolutely back it and think it's a great bit of advice. there's no context behind it, but which is then I have to add that context for him. But it's empower the pupil or empower the learner, and all about just getting the learning out of the learner, which obviously we massively go on about in all of our training. So yeah, fully behind that. So yeah, empower the learner is probably the smartest thing I've heard an examiner say.
I like that, and yeah, I get the fact that there's absolutely no context to that. That's those sweeping statements again, isn't it? So it's nice. I think it's also another advocate for why you should have your trainer there. Um, most certainly at the debrief, if not in the thing. Um, the best advice I had from an examiner I heard, I'm going to go with the advice that I got personally after I'd passed, and it was just lovely. And he said his parting words to me were, and I did well and I was happy with my score and all the rest of it. He went, "Don't rest on your laurels." That's what he said. And I think, I can confidently say I never have done. Constantly, constantly seeking to understand more and finding new ways and building up my toolbox, etc., etc., etc. Because I think it was the best advice he could have given me. So simple. And it just struck a chord with me. Yes, there wasn't any context again, but my interpretation of it was, yeah, okay, you did well, but you could always do better. You can always do better. And I think that's what I almost strive to do daily. Whatever I do, I can always do better. So that was best advice from an examiner for me.
Almost like you're sweating in peacetime so that you don't bleed in wartime.
Exactly, 100%.
Okay, so shall we listen to our story this week? Again, is everyone sitting comfortably? Got your little cup of cocoa?
Hiya, so it's Iwan Williams here again. My story goes back to, I think it was 2017, 2018, and it was the Beast from the East. So the Arctic blast in February, March time. And I was on a driving lesson with a girl who was quite early, maybe 4 or 5 lessons in. And I made a mistake. I didn't notice. Should have been going from second to third. Went second to first. Before I had a chance to put my clutch down, her clutch was straight out and my engine went bang, and we had to pull over. Her mother came to get her in about 20 minutes. iPhone breakdown, and because of the awful weather conditions, was told to expect a wait between 2 and 3 hours. So I hunkered down and kind of put a hat on and a coat and waited. And after probably an hour and a half or so, my bladder started to get a little bit full, shall we say. And it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. There were some houses around, but not many. Certainly nowhere to go to the toilet. No trees, bushes, no hidden spots either. And after a while, it started to get really quite painful. So I started thinking and remembering, actually, about 15, 16 years ago, I used to teach a young boy called Martin, and I remember dropping him off a couple of times at his grandparents' house. And they were about a quarter of a mile, half a mile away from where I was. So I decided, sod it, I'm going to go for it, see if they remember me. So I walked a little bit keeled over because I was in a lot of pain at that time, and knocked on the door. And thankfully, Martin's grandfather opened the door. I quickly said, "Hi, I'm really sorry to disturb you. I don't know if you remember me. I taught your grandson Martin to drive. My car's broke down. I bust in to go to the toilet. Breakdown's going to be a while. Can I please use your loo?" And the grandfather kind of turned and shouted down the corridor, "Margaret, Iwan Williams is here. He wants to use the toilet." And then I heard this voice, kind of muffled voice down the corridor a bit, saying, "Oh, for God's sake." So I thought, okay, I wasn't hopeful, but he stood aside and said, "Come on in, third door on the left." Thought, great. So I sprinted down the hallway, went into the toilet, started to go to the toilet, and I heard this sound over my shoulder. It sounded like water running. And when I turned around, Martin's grandmother, was probably in her 90s now, was thankfully behind the shower rail, but having a shower. And I was having a wee inches from her. And I continued then to have probably the longest wee I had ever had in my entire life. And about halfway through, she turned the shower off. And I had to cough and make a noise and wee in the middle of the water to make sure it was nice and noisy. And I heard her then again go, "Oh, for God's sake." And anyway, I finished my business, sprinted out of the house, shouted thank you, closed the door, and I've never seen them since. So yeah, that's my story about the beast from East.
No,
Hope it gave you a little chuckle.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I think we could get an entire book of stories like that, though, from driving instructors getting in just absolute betters.
I'm like literally absolutely mortified for him on every fibre of my being.
I just love how that story kept getting worse.
Yeah.
So, first of all, he's on a driving lesson in horrendous weather. Now his car's broken. Now his car's broken in horrendous weather and he stood out in the rain. Now he needs a wee. Now he's gone to this, managed to somehow get into the house, and then there's an old lady having a shower, next to him. And an outstanding story. And I love the fact that the granddad remembered him.
I mean, but I also I'm slightly concerned by the fact that the granddad didn't know that his wife was in the shower.
Well, we don't know that he didn't know that.
Oh my gosh.
He might have just been like, yeah, in you go.
This is just horrific. Oh, so embarrassing. Oh, I'd just die. I'd die of death. I would absolutely die of death. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Imagine him going home and having to tell that story.
I think he has to go and report himself. Sorry, Iwan, that was too funny.
That was a very good way to finish the podcast. So I think we'll say goodbye to everyone.
Sounds perfect, and I hope that today's episode has inspired you to be the best instructor that you can be.
Inspire Instructor Training Podcast, where the learning never stops.